I just want to preface by saying that this TExES Life Science 7th through 12th grade is to teach you guys the basic fundamentals, and probably about 40% of your test will be on all these PowerPoints. However, you will need to still do research outside of these PowerPoints. But if you memorize everything, I have a motto that if you memorize everything, you cannot fail. So memorize everything on this PowerPoint and then memorize things outside of this PowerPoint, but this PowerPoint will help give you a basic understanding and knowledge you need to succeed in this test. You could listen to this audio in the car, or you can listen to this right now while you're watching the videos. Alright, go watch part 1 so that way I could explain more about the sections and everything. And let's get right into it. Equilibrium of a system. A system in balance where no forces are acting on objects within the system, resulting in a stable state. For instance, you're running on the treadmill, you're in constant motion. However, if you're not moving forward or backwards as fast as you run forward, the treadmill is moving backwards. A child's swing comes to a complete stop, hanging straight down. Evolution. The gradual process of change and development over time, particularly in living organisms, leading to the diversity of life on Earth. For example, consider a population of birds over generations. Birds with longer beaks may be better suited to gather food in their environment. As these birds reproduce, the traits of longer beaks may become more common in the population, leading to an evolutionary change in the characteristics of the bird population. Variables, the elements that could change during an experiment that may influence the outcomes. These factors are typically explored to understand their impact on the results. For example, testing plant growth by varying the amount of water given to different groups of plants. The independent variable, which is the water amount changing levels. Dependent variable, plant growth, the outcome measured. Controlled variables kept constant, sunlight, soil type. So basically, that I'm just showing what the variables are here and like examples of them. Independent variables, manipulated factor by scientists in experiment to observe if it influences a change. For example, in a study on the impact of light on plant growth, independent variable, amount of light altered by the scientist. Dependent variable, plant growth measured outcome. Dependent variable. The dependent variable is a factor in an experiment that is observed, measured, or analyzed as it responds to changes in the independent variable. It is the outcome or result influenced by manipulation of the independent variable. What is the controlled variable? Well, it is a factor in the experiment that remains unchanged to ensure the reliability and validity of the study. It is deliberately held constant or controlled to isolate the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. Chemical bond. Chemical bond is a force that holds atoms together in a compound, forming molecules or ions. What is bias in science? Well, a bias in science is when a scientist's pre-existing assumption or prior knowledge unconsciously or consciously affects the investigation. It introduces the potential for bias. Example, testing a small sample of subjects, testing a group of subjects that is not diverse, and looking for patterns in data to confirm ideas or opinions already held. So basically, like, let me just, for instance, like a bias in science, like let's say you're doing an experiment on, well, there's biases in general, but if you just have knowledge from before, and it can affect investigation. Let's say you already have some biases on like any type of experiment, like in general. You just feel like this way and very strongly particular. Well, the thing is that's a bias, and that's going to make things harder when you're trying to do the experiment. A hypothesis is an educated guess or statement that suggests a possible explanation for observed phenomena. Examples: plants require sunlight for optimal growth. What is a quark? Quark is a fundamental particle, a building block of matter. Characteristics: never found alone, always combines to form larger particles called hadrons. Come in 6 flavors: up, down, charm, strange, top, and bottom. Role: essential in forming protons and neutrons, which make up atomic nuclei. Force binding quarks, bound by the strong force mediated by particles called gluons. Branch of physics studied in quantum chromodynamics, QDZ, a part of the standard model of particle physics. What is physics? Physics is the study of physical phenomena like the motion of matter and energy and force. What is single variable research? Non-experimental investigators of this type involved researcher observing conditions or events both before and after applying treatment or posing a question. For instance, researchers would invite participants to make 3 attempts to jump into the air as high as they could from a standing position. Researchers would then average out 3 attempts into one number. Scientific knowledge refers to information and understanding that has been acquired through the scientific method, a systematic approach to inquiry and investigation. What is negative feedback? Negative feedback is a regulatory mechanism in the system. It counteracts change by bringing systems back towards its initial or previous conditions. For example, thermostat in a room maintains temperature by turning off heating when it becomes too warm or vice versa. What is a scientific theory? It's a strong and tested explanation for something in nature. It has a lot of evidence to support it and can be checked through experiments or observations. If an explanation cannot be tested, it's not a scientific theory. For example, Newton's theory of gravity. What is a feedback loop in systems? A feedback loop is a component within a system. It involves utilizing some or all of the system's output as input for subsequent operations. This cyclical process helps regulate and adjust the system's behavior over time. Think of it as a continuous loop where the system learns from its own output, influencing future actions, an essential mechanism for self-correction and adaptation within the systems. Here's some examples. Consider a thermostat in a heating system. The thermostat that measures the current temperature is the output. If the temperature is below the set point, it signals the heating systems to turn on, and that's the input. As the heating system operates, it raises the temperature. The thermostat continuously monitors the temperature and adjusts the heating system accordingly. This ongoing feedback loop maintains the desired temperature within the system. Now, what is positive feedback? Positive feedback is a type of input into a system. The result of this input reinforces or amplifies the system's current direction. It encourages the system to continue along the same path it was initially heading. This mechanism often leads to an intensification or acceleration of the system's behavior. What is input? Input is something added to make things happen. It's like giving information, energy, or materials to the system, causing a change. Inputs are what the system processes to produce results or outputs. Output. Once a system has completed its process, it outputs the result. An output is whatever comes out of the system. For example, input: bright sunlight exposure. Output: pupil constriction the eye as a physiological response to regulate the amount of light entering the eyes. What's a chemical reaction? Formation of a new substance through atomic bonding rearrangement. Energy absorption during bond breaking. Energy release during bond making. And also you might want to learn how to balance a chemical reaction. There's a possibility that could be on the test, or at least just understand what that is. For example, NaOH plus HCl is NaCl plus H2O. There are plenty of videos on YouTube how to do that. If you want me to make a specific YouTube video on how to do that in general, I can do that for you. Electron. Particle with low mass and negative charge, encompasses the atom's nucleus. Quasi-experimental research. Quasi-experimental research is a form of non-experimental study where the researcher examines the impact of an independent variable but opts for selecting experimental groups instead of a random assignment. For example, you test a group of people on their knowledge of U.S. history, then you assign them a study packet and test them again to see if their knowledge has increased. What's leptin? Leptin is a type of subatomic particle that belongs to the family of fundamental particles, known for its low mass and lack of internal structures. Heliocentricity. Heliocentricity is the astronomical model that places the Sun at the center of the solar system, with planets including Earth orbiting around it. The concept was initially proposed by Copernicus in 1543 and further developed by Galileo in 1632. I highly doubt you need to know those dates, but this is just for context. What is an inference? Drawing logical conclusions or making educated interpretations based on available evidence, observations, and existing knowledge. For example, if you notice someone is making a disgusted face after they've taken a bite of their lunch, you can infer they do not like it. So basically, you're just kind of assuming based on like an educated guess, basically. But not really a guess, just more an educated assumption. Natural phenomena. Observable events or occurrences that take place in the natural world, driven by natural forces and processes. For example, tsunamis, tornadoes, lightning, halos, and floods. Dmitry Mendeleev published the first periodic table, elements arranged by mass. Physiology. Physiology is the study of how living things function and works, aims to understand the mechanism of living things. System model. Conceptual model covering all aspects of a system, includes planning, goals, analysis, solving, testing, implementation, and evaluation. Here's a picture of the system model to kind of understand what this is. It's a lot, I know. If you're in a car listening to this, you can always look at the pictures later. Non-experimental investigation. Research that lacks the manipulation of an independent variable. Does not regulate other factors in the investigation. Conditions are not meticulously controlled. Example, surveys, observation, analysis of observed behavior. Experimental investigation. Researchers assign the subjects to specific treatments in the sample. Effects of this treatment are observed and analyzed. This method has the capacity to demonstrate caution, highlighting cause and effect relationships. What is dynamic property? Dynamic property is a characteristic of a system to continually change in response to a stimulus. This implies that the system is not static and adapts and evolves based on external influences. Example, volcanic eruptions from geothermal pressures. Data. What is data? Factual information, often in the form of measurements, observations, or records as systematically collected, analyzed, and used to draw conclusions, make predictions, or support hypotheses. Experimentation. Conducting tests, trials, or investigations to gather data, make observations, and validate hypotheses in a systematic manner. Natural sciences. Understanding the world through a blend of biology, chemistry, physics, and earth sciences. Models are representations of scientific phenomena that could take form of physical objects, mathematical equations, or visual depictions. They serve to illustrate, explain, or stimulate aspects of the world for scientific understanding and study. Theoretical explanations. It's a comprehensive framework or hypothesis that seeks to provide overarching understanding of a phenomenon based on observations, existing knowledge, and logical reasoning. What's a scientific method? It's a process of objectively establishing facts through testing and experimentation. So here's the steps. Step 1, observation. Identify and observe a phenomenon or a question in the natural world. Step 2 is to research, conduct background research to gather information, understand existing knowledge about the observed phenomenon. Hypothesis is the third step. Formulate a clear, testable hypothesis that proposes explanation for the observed phenomena. Step 4, experimentation. Design and conduct experiments to test hypotheses. Collect data through systematic observation and measurement. Data analysis. Analyze the collected data using a statistical method and other relevant tools to draw meaningful conclusions. Step 6. Conclusion. Draw a conclusion based on the analysis of the data. Evaluate whether the results support or refute the hypothesis. Communication. Share the findings through scientific reports, presentation, or publication to contribute to collecting knowledge in this field. What is peer review? The process or verification conducted by fellow experts within the same field, guaranteeing the accuracy and excellence of published work. Boundaries. What are boundaries? They set limits that determine what is included and excluded from the system under the study. They help define the scope and extent of the study or analysis. Example, consider a study of an ecosystem in a forest. The boundaries of the system might be set to include all living organisms, soil, and air within the forest, excluding external factors like neighboring ecosystems. These boundaries help to focus study specific interactions, relationships within the defined system. Gregor Mendel, father of modern genetics, conduct groundbreaking experiments with pea plants to explore hereditary patterns. Noted consistent ratios, in particular crossing unveiling the concept of dominant and recessive genes. Significantly contribute to understanding of how traits are inherited by living organisms. Conservation of energy. In a closed system, the total energy remains constant. Energy may transform or relocate within the system, but overall the amount stays the same. This principle emphasizes that the energy is conserved, highlighting an interconnectedness of various forms of energy. It implies while energy can change its appearance or shift within the system, the sum of all energy components remains unchanged. Examples: pendulum swinging back and forth, man jumping off the boards into water. Charles Darwin. What theories is Charles Darwin known for? Natural selection, evolution. Those theories were published in the book On the Origin of Species. Alright guys, next video will be part 3 to show you some more. I hope you guys enjoyed part 2. Have a great day. Bye bye.